Keep watching and waiting.
Hello, this is Congressman Brad Sherman, live from Washington, D.C., when we're going to start another one of our telephone town hall meetings, live from a, unfortunately, dysfunctional House of Representatives. First, a little on the logistics side. Please jot down the following phone number, 855-920-0548. If we get disconnected for any reason, just dial that number, 855-920-0548, and save that number because we're going to do our next telephone town hall on November 16th, 7 p.m., and you can dial that number again, 855-920-0548. Of course, that's toll-free, and if you want to submit a question in advance of our next town hall or November town hall, you can go to bradsherman.house.gov. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with these telephone town halls, it's just like a giant conference call. We'll have thousands of people involved from the south and west San Fernando Valley and parts of the west side. And we're going to have a special guest, given all that's happening in Israel and the Middle East. Our special guest is Ambassador Israel Bachar, who is the representative of the government of Israel, not only to Southern California, but a majority of the western states as well. In addition, we've had people submit questions to us on our website. We'll take a few of those. And we will be doing surveys throughout this presentation so that even if you don't get a chance to voice your opinions orally, you'll be able to register your opinions on important matters that are on people's minds today. Now, if you dial *3, you'll be connected to my staff. At that point, you can either talk to them about a personal matter, or most of you who dial *3 will want to be put in the queue and ask a question, which will be heard by many thousands of people in our district. Now, if you like this town hall and you want more of it, only with video, I was on C-SPAN's Washington Journal, and you can find that at cspan.org and search for Brad Sherman. Now, we're going to be concluding this at around 8:10 p.m., so we'll have about 70 minutes. The U.S. has a very complex governmental structure. We're city, county, state, different branches at each level. But I'm very proud of our constituent service program, and we can certainly help you if you have an issue with a federal agency. And we're in the Westcom building on Van Nuys Boulevard in America's best-named city, Sherman Oaks. Or you can give us a call at 818-501-9200. There you'll be connected with our fine constituent service team, a couple of whom have joined us tonight, Scott Abrams, who heads our office, and John Alford. And I want to describe their work for a second. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. It could happen. It could affect you. It could be Social Security, Veterans Benefit, the IRS, a passport. If you're having a problem with a federal agency, give us a call. Call John Alford. He'll work very hard. He'll solve your problem. And then I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. It's an outstanding system. A couple particular items on constituent service. First, passports. If your passport's going to expire in less than a year, go to the State Department website and renew it way earlier than you think you need to. The State Department is very backed up on passports, and it is a bad system. If, however, you need, something happens and you need to travel on 2 weeks' notice, and there's no other way to handle it with working with the State Department, give us a call. We can arrange emergency passport visits. Second, knowing our district, we've got people who have friends and relatives who are in Israel who are trying to leave, and of course, many of the U.S. carriers have stopped flying. We also have some who will be in Gaza and are trying to leave. So let me give you the information there. For those American citizens who are in Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, or the West Bank, you go to IL, that's short for Israel, il.usembassy.gov, and there you'll see the crisis intake form for U.S. citizens. This is a form that can help get you on one of the flights or the ship that has been chartered by the U.S. government. They're flying to Athens, they're flying to Frankfurt, and the ship goes to Cyprus. Likewise, this is the form to fill out if your relative is in Gaza. So far, President Sisi has not allowed American citizens to go through the Rafah gate into Egypt and then to proceed to the United States. I expect that will be worked out in the next couple of days, but we'll have to see. Finally, if somebody's not a U.S. citizen but wants to come to the U.S., they need a visa, but our visa processing operation in Israel has been halted. Now, I have fought for over a decade to make Israel a visa waiver country so that Israelis could visit the United States as easily as Europeans do. We have that going into effect, but not until the end of November. So Israelis still need to get a visa if they want to come here now. I'm trying to accelerate that process, having worked on it for a decade, because now is a time when at least some Israelis feel it's important to come to the United States. One other thing on constituent service, and that is if you know a young man or woman interested in attending West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, in order to get in, they need not only the fine grades that would get them into any other outstanding university, they also need the nomination of their member of Congress. And so contact John Alford, and if they're in their senior year of high school, do it now in October of their senior year in high school. John Alford processes these for me, and then I'm able to determine who to nominate. We have, I'm told, roughly 3,000 people on the line, and more are being added as we make more outgoing calls. And if you want to be in line to either talk to my staff personally or to ask a question, dial *3. Now, if you're coming to Washington, D.C. For a little tourism, call us here at 202-225-5911. Ask for Melissa, ask for Sarah Martin, and we'll set you up with the best tours. Now, this is obviously a very difficult time in the world and a difficult time for our country. We do not have a Speaker of the House of Representatives. We cannot function and pass laws without a Speaker. This fight has been going on for over 2 weeks. Republicans control 52% of the seats in the House, and they have simply refused to let Democrats be even a junior partner in running the House. Instead, they insist upon a Republican-only process on everything, every decision, and aren't interested in talking, as of yet, on a more cooperative approach. On the other hand, trying to run the House by themselves, they can't reach unity, and that is why we have no Speaker. So far, they have not reached out to, not a single Republican has formally reached out to a single Democrat to say, let's design a system in which we don't just rely on the most extreme 2% of the 52% majority, but rather we have something that reflects the broad middle of the Congress. This is particularly important because the government shuts down on November 17th unless Congress takes action to continue funding. One of the most extreme aspects of that is our soldiers and sailors and Marines have to continue working, but they don't get paid. And I can't think of a more outrageous way to treat our our men and women in uniform. There are a host of other issues to cover, but what's on people's minds right now is what is happening in the Middle East. And we have a special guest who has joined us, and he is Ambassador Israel Bachar, who is the representative of the government of Israel, not only to the Los Angeles area, but to majority of our western states and throughout Southern California. And I'm going to turn it over to the ambassador to give us some insight. A couple of points I'll make in advance because of the all of the discussion of the hospital that was, unfortunately, there was an explosion. We don't know how many people were killed there. There are reports from an entity that calls itself the Gaza Health Ministry. Take that with a grain of salt. That is Hamas. So it's the Hamas propaganda ministry, but clearly some people died there. You should know that roughly 30% of these rockets that are shot from Gaza into Israel never leave Gaza. They go up, they fall down, and in a recent study of the unfortunate and much smaller warfare that took place last year, we found that 1/3 of the 44 deaths that occurred in that incident were caused by, that's 1/3 of the Palestinian deaths, by rockets shot by terrorists falling back down. The second thing to be aware of is Israel has asked Gazans to move from North Gaza to South Gaza. There was a report that they were asked to do that in 24 hours. Of course, that was more than 96 hours ago. You should realize that the distance you're talking here is, for the average Gaza resident, 6 or 7 miles. Usually when you talk about evacuating a war zone, you talk about moving hundreds of miles. This is very different. The good news is that President Biden has negotiated to start the process of bringing aid into Gaza. Some 20 trucks will be allowed in by the Egyptians through the Rafah Gate in southern Gaza. First, he acquired Israel, got Israel to agree to this, and then just concluded that with Egypt. So let's hear from the ambassador.
Good evening, Congressman Sherman. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your long and strong support to the state of Israel, especially during this time also. And Congressman Sherman, your solidarity, friendship, and alliance with the state of Israel is appreciated. I really don't have much time, unfortunately, because I'm going on national TV, but I'm going to be with you a few minutes. Sorry about it. Time is running. So let me give you some little bit of updates of the current situation right now in Israel. First of all, I would like to say thank you also to the American people and for President Biden. His unequivocal support to Israel lift the morale in Israel and also saved a lot of Israeli life and American life by deterring Iran and Hezbollah getting into this war, literally saving thousands of lives. So we are thankful for that, and thank you also for the military aid and ammunition that we are getting with different airlifts. We do appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted. I would like to say a few words about the humanitarian issue because it was in the last few days on the media. So the Gaza Strip is basically, it's 20 miles by 5 miles. We're trying to move or to convince the Gazans to move to the southern part of Gaza, so to make sure that there are not civilian casualties when we start the ground operation. So far, 600,000 Gazan moved to the southern border. The rest did not move or did not relocate because the Hamas prevent from them to do so. They blockade the road and also the threat to shoot them if they do so. So that's why we are waiting and we are patient about it so far. We are understanding the situation. In regards to the hospital yesterday, what happened? First of all, it's unfortunate, of course, and Israel did not attack the hospital. It was a missile that was launched in Gaza and basically landed in Gaza. Out of the 5,000 missiles that were fired in Israel, the statistics show that 10%, 500 of the missiles landed in Gaza. It happened every day. Yesterday, what happened? It's one of the rocket hit the hospital, and we got a lot of people, unfortunately, dead. But it was done completely by the Hamas, and it's the Hamas fault. It's obvious from our intelligence and the U.S. intelligence.
Ambassador, was it Hamas or Islamic Jihad? Which I realized.
So Islamic Jihad. We know it's Islamic Jihad, if to be more accurate.
Which is kind of the twin small brother of Hamas. Go on.
Correct. So that's the facts on the ground. We are trying. President Biden asked us to lift to give the opportunity to Gaza to get supply from Egypt, water supply, food supply, and medicine. We allow it. So I think currently, if I can say it with caution, there is not a really humanitarian crisis in Gaza from the perspective of food, water, and medicine. They have all the supply needed. In regards to electricity, there were, just to everybody know, there were 10 lines. The grid was composed of 10 grid lines that were connected to Israel. Nine of the grid lines were damaged by Hamas rockets, so they are dysfunctionable, and currently they get their electricity from fuel. The problem is, as President Biden mentioned today, that even the fuel that's supposed to be a supply for electricity, the Hamas steal it from different UN centers and take the fuel to use it for military or terrorist action. So that's the reality on the humanitarian side. I'm not going to go now in length about the Israeli humanitarian crisis and what we experienced. Everybody knows the atrocities, and I'm a little short of time, but clearly also we experienced a greater humanitarian crisis in Israel because of what happened. So I believe that, I hope to believe that the American deterrence will continue to be effective vis-a-vis Hezbollah in Iran. And as long as America has a credible deterrence in the region, we hope to have only a one-front war and not two-front war. We pray so that's going to be the situation, but if it's going to be otherwise, we will win also a two-way front war. Don't get it wrong. We will. So if you have any other question for me, please do, because I'm a little bit running out of time, so I'm willing to hear any question.
Well, let's see if we can take one question from the floor, if we have one, Don, for the ambassador.
We do. Gary has a question for the Consul General. Gary, you are on.
And Gary, tell us what town you're from.
Gary had to step out. This is his wife, Dawn. I heard the question. The question was, why isn't there any sort of discussion about Iran, who funds and who supports and who encourages and who ignites these smaller groups? Why isn't Israel, who has weapons, trying to do something about them before they do something about Israel and have nuclear weapons to do it?
You basically raised two different questions, one in the present and one strategic in the future. But we clearly stated at the beginning that there is no doubt that the Iranians are financing, orchestrating, supplying the Hamas with all the supplies they can give them. So they do so around the year, all year long. We are aware of it. The Americans are aware of it. It's not new. Also, I tend to believe that it's hard for me to believe that the Iranian did not know or have any clue about this attack. But as far as my experience, we need to wait a little bit and let the intelligence come up along the way to see exactly what they directed or were involved in this attack.
And I'll point out Israel from time to time does carry out covert actions against Iran, particularly its nuclear weapons program. It's not like Israel sits back and does nothing.
That's true.
But there's obviously more to do, and a lot of that is done through the U.S. sanctions that continue to hobble the Iranian economy.
Correct.
Ambassador, thank you so much. If you have to leave, leave. Otherwise, we can talk some more.
I have to leave. Sorry about it. I'm happy to discuss later on or to join another time. More than happy about it.
We're having another town hall on November 16th, and maybe you can join us there, particularly if there's some good news. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Congressman Sherman.
Thank you. I do want to point out on this subject that in every war, countries have got to determine what they do to protect civilians versus what they do to maximize their military objectives without incurring their own military casualties. And the United States, whenever it has conducted bombing, we don't warn the civilians that are there, because that, of course, warns your enemy as well. Israel often does. When we invaded, for example, Normandy during World War II, we did not warn the civilians, and these were French civilians, these were people on our side, that we were coming or to get out of the way. As a matter of fact, we did everything possible to make people think we weren't going to land in Normandy. And throughout our wars, whether it's Vietnam or the Pacific or European theaters of World War II, we did everything possible to deny fuel and to deny electricity to the side we were fighting, and all aspects of the enemy's society. Israel is putting, piping in water. Some electricity is getting in, and of course Israel is allowing fuel trucks to get in. There was video on CNN that showed fuel trucks getting in. I then talked to Samantha Power, who runs USAID, which is our effort to supply people in trouble and to aid in development. She's not certain that those trucks actually got in, although you see them on CNN, but it's pretty apparent that fuel will be getting in by the decision of Egypt and Israel. The idea of taking fuel to the other side is not something that America has ever allowed in any war that we've fought, nor has any other country, to my knowledge, throughout history. So Israel gets a lot of blame. The other thing I'll point out, because I've not only done a lot of research, but I have sources of my own when it comes to what is militarily possible. And President Biden is absolutely right to say that all the evidence points that this hospital that had an explosion in its parking lot was hit by a missile fired from Gaza. The Israelis have released audio of Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists talking about it and saying that is exactly what happened. As we've said, many of the missiles fired from Gaza land in Gaza the kind of explosion was the kind you would have from a failed missile. It certainly would have been a much a larger explosion if it was a bomb dropped by a plane. So I realize that a lot of people just quoted whatever the so-called Gaza Ministry of Health said, but in fact that is a propaganda arm. And I'm not saying that they don't also provide medical care, but their spokespeople for the Gaza Ministry of Health are just part of the propagandists from Hamas. With that, let's take a question, and then we'll do a survey question.
All right, Congressman, sticking on foreign policy and the Middle East, we have a question from Frank. We're also regarding Iran. Frank, you are on now.
Yes, Congressman, thank you for taking my call. My question for you is, if a resolution comes to the House to freeze again the $6 billion of the Iranian government money, would you vote for it? Thank you.
Absolutely, and I have advocated it. I don't know whether we're going to be able to carry it out, but I'm certainly for it. And I was for it before October 7th. This is Iran's money because this is the money for the oil that they have exported over several years to South Korea. But we had that money frozen in South Korean banks, and the only reason it was transferred where it is less frozen in a Qatari bank is to get our hostages out. Well, when you pay a ransom to a kidnapper, you do everything to get that ransom back. There's no obligation to leave the kidnapper with the ransom. This is literally ransom. The money should be returned to South Korea. Whether or not Qatar will do that, I don't know. We have an understanding with Qatar that the money can only be spent by the Iranians for food and medicine, and that we have to approve the invoices. Whether we can go beyond that and say, we don't care if they're going to buy food and medicine, don't pay any invoices, send the money back to South Korea where it can be fully frozen. Whether the Qataris will agree to that depends, and there's a lot of politics involved. But that's certainly justice, because money that is frozen, or unfrozen, only to get hostages back, should be refrozen as soon as possible. With that, we're going to do a survey question so that everyone has a chance to express their opinion. This is our first one. And this is a question we ask in each one of these town halls so we can compare these results to the results we had on July 20th. Do you approve of President Biden's performance as president so far? Press 1 if you approve. Press 2 if you disapprove. Press 3 if you're unsure. With that, let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have a mix here. Question about the speaker and how it could affect the functioning of our foreign policy from Stephanie. Stephanie, you are on now.
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
First, I want to commend Scott Abrams in your office. Shout out. I also pray for the safe and quick return of all the hostages.
Of course.
So after watching President Biden's address in Israel, I have 2 questions for you, and thank you for taking my questions.
Okay. You're going to get 2 questions. Everybody else from here on out, I forgot to say, they should just ask 1 question, but go on.
Oh, I'll just ask 1 question then.
Okay.
How does not having a Speaker of the House affect President Biden's proposed package for Israel and Gaza?
There's enough money already appropriated for the next few weeks in the Middle East. But obviously, we're going to have to pass a supplemental to deal with this issue. It's obviously huge. And the sooner we do that, the sooner the Israelis know that this or that amount of aid and this or that types of weapons are on the way. The House of Representatives, however, can't pass a bill until we have a speaker or until we change the rules. And Republicans insist that they're going to just elect a speaker based on their 52% control, which means that they need 99% of their 52% in order to elect a speaker. Not a single Republican candidate for speaker has even quietly asked any Democrat to vote for them, let alone discussed whether what they would do to merit such a vote. Right now we have a Speaker pro tem whose powers are limited to overseeing the House as we constantly try to vote for a speaker. And you remember in January we did this 15 times. I guess so far we've done it 2 or 3 times. And there is talk that if we can't select a permanent speaker, we could give the temporary speaker, the Speaker pro tem, power to oversee the House when we actually pass legislation for a while, certain types of legislation. And again, we're ready to sit down with any Republicans and discuss how to change those rules, or if the Republicans can completely agree amongst themselves, they can change the rules without us. But this is a terrible time for us not to have a fully functioning House of Representatives, and we're ready to work with the other side on just about anything. But inside the Republican caucus, everybody's beating their chest and talking about how they're going to do things without talking to Democrats. And as long as they do that, then it's up to them. I think we have the results from that survey question. Approve, Biden, 72%. Disapprove, 19%. Unsure, 9%. And that compares with 75, 16, and 9 back on July 20th. Very similar numbers. Don, let's go on to the next question.
Yes, I just want to remind folks, *3 if they want to ask the Congressman a question or want to talk to his staff. We have a question from Lexi about what happens come November 17 when the CR runs out. Lexi, you are on now.
And Lexi, what town are you from?
Hi, Congressman Sherman. My name is Lexi, and I reside in Sherman Oaks, and I have to go way back because when I was in high school and I lived in West Hills, I actually worked on your campaign for my high school project. So I have been in your district that long, so I have to say. So I work for the federal government. I work for the VA, and that has been my job for the last 17 years since I got my master's. And so this is the second time, I've dealt with, the continuing resolution. So if the Republicans cannot come to a resolution, I still go to work because, I'm an essential employee. But, therein lays the thing. I have coworkers that the last time when this situation arose, they had to come to work for 6 weeks with no paycheck. And, it's not just my, employees that I work with. There's a whole bunch of other people who have to show up to work and not get paid. What is the discussion for what is going to occur if on November 17th, the Republicans still cannot come up with a speaker?
Well, not only would they have to come up with a speaker, we'd have to reach an agreement on how to fund the government. I'll give a long answer because there are many aspects to this. The federal government operates on a fiscal year. So while the rest of us think the end of the year is December 31, for fiscal matters in the federal government, the end of the year is September 30th. So we're just beginning a new year. We're supposed to pass 12 individual appropriations bills that would describe how money should be spent and allocate money to be spent in the year beginning October 1st of this year, and reflect current priorities. things change. You'd want your money spent in the year beginning October 1, 2023, according to the best current information. Routinely and tragically, we often don't meet the deadline. We should meet the deadline well in advance so that your department, like the VA, should know in the summer how much money you'll be spending in the year beginning October 1. Instead, here we are in mid-October, you still don't know. But at least the true ugliness can be prevented as long as Congress passes a continuing resolution, which is something that says we'll just keep money spent the same way we did for the year that just ended. And that way, federal employees still work, they still get paid, we're kind of on automatic pilot, and then finally we should pass those appropriations bills. If we don't pass a continuing resolution, then the federal agencies have no money, but essential employees, including uniformed personnel in the military, are required to keep working, and in the military with criminal prosecutions if they don't, and court-martials, but they don't get paid. And then another group of federal employees deemed, quote, non-essential, go home, don't work, but what's weird is eventually they will get paid. Now, the people who don't get paid, they will eventually get paid. But go try to pay your mortgage today with the fact that Uncle Sam owes you some money later. That doesn't work. So eventually all federal employees, whether they have to work during the lapse of appropriations or government shutdown, if you will, or whether they're not working, should get paid. But people like to get paid on time. We came very close to a shutdown on October 1st when Republicans tried to pass a ugly CR, continuing resolution, that they knew the Senate wouldn't pass. And the fact is it was so ugly that only 198 of the 221 Republicans were willing to vote for it. And a few didn't vote for it because it wasn't ugly enough, and others wouldn't vote for it because it was too ugly. But anyway, they only got 198 votes. And talk about how ugly it was. It drastically cut federal aid to education, especially LAUSD. It slashed money for pregnant women and infants. And coincidentally, it cut aid to Israel by 30%. It was a truly ugly continuing resolution, and the Republicans couldn't pass it. And so then Kevin McCarthy was in a position where the Senate had a reasonable continuing resolution. It just kept things on automatic pilot, and he brought it to the floor and allowed us to vote on it, and we voted for it fairly overwhelmingly. That's almost all the Democrats voted for it. About half the Republicans voted for it. It passed by a big margin, and it provides that we keep the government on automatic pilot till November 17th. By November 17th, we need not only to have a functioning House, but we need a speaker. We not only need a speaker, we need a speaker who's willing to put on the floor for a vote, allow us to vote on something the Senate would think is reasonable, something the President would think is reasonable. And so we not only need a speaker elected as soon as possible, but we need a Republican Party that won't bounce that speaker out again the way they did Kevin McCarthy because he had a reasonable because he put something reasonable on the floor. It is a weird situation, but a Republican speaker can get bounced for doing something that 60-70% of the House agrees with. That is to say, all the Democrats and about half the Republicans agree with. So this is no way to run a government. There are taxpayers out there who don't work for the federal government who say, well, wait a minute, this means that if we shut down the government, some people don't work and we still have to end up paying them, but late. That sounds like we're losing a lot of money for not getting the services that they provide. This is a terrible way to run a government. What we need to do is pass the 12 different appropriations bills. That will, I don't think we get that done by November 17th. So the question is whether we will be able to agree on the continuing resolution that we have now, or whether it all blows up. And as long as Republicans insist on running things without Democratic participation, then any 5 Republican members, and trust me, there are, if you list the 5 craziest Republican members, you're talking way out there crazy. They're in control. They're empowered. So we have a month, but it's not good. Let's do another survey question, and this is: which of the following describes your view of President Biden's response to the Middle East crisis? So, press 1 if you think he's handling it about right. Press 2 if you think he should be more supportive of Israel than he is. Press 3 if you think he should be more supportive of the Palestinians and less supportive of Israel. And press 4 if you're unsure. 1, handle correct. 2, should support Israel more. 3, support the Palestinians more. 4, unsure. Let's go on to the next oral question.
Okay, Congressman, returning to the Middle East, we have a question from Drew from Chatsworth about ceasefire. Drew, you are on now.
Hello, Representative Sherman. Thank you for your attention. My name is Drew. I'm from Chatsworth, and as your constituent, I feel compelled to voice my concern for the humanitarian crisis and ongoing war in Israel and occupied Palestine. And I'm here to ask if you will support the resolution introduced by your colleagues, Representative Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Andre Carson, Summer Lee, and Delia Ramirez, which calls for an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire to the violence in that region.
What's happening there is horrific, and we all want it to stop. And we'd all like to see a ceasefire. We had a ceasefire on October 6th, and it had lasted, with some problems, for many years. And then on October 7th, Hamas exploded out of Gaza, killed 1,400 Israeli civilians. Now, if they had wanted to fight Israel, they could have stayed in Israel and fought. But as soon as they killed a lot of people and captured a couple hundred or more, they retreated behind human shields. We want to see a ceasefire, but we need to see, for that to happen, what Hamas needs to do is first, of course, free the civilian hostages, and second, turn over their weapons, because they are a terrorist organization, and terrorist organizations shouldn't have weapons. If you just do a ceasefire without that, then they continue to hold their hostages. They have threatened to and will execute them on video. So we have a ceasefire tomorrow. A week later, they execute a hostage on video and say, but we have a ceasefire. And then a week later, they execute another hostage, and a week later, another gruesome video. And then after 2 or 3 months of preparing, they go out and explode. They may not be quite as successful as they were the first time, but they kill for another 1,000 Israelis, come back to Gaza behind their human shields and say, now it's time for another ceasefire. Then we have a ceasefire for a few months. They regroup, they reorganize, and they go back out. Maybe they're less successful. Maybe they'll only kill 800 Israelis, and they come back maybe with not 250 additional hostages, maybe only 100 additional hostages. And then every week they're executing a hostage on video. We can't have In order to have a ceasefire, Hamas has got to turn over their weapons and, of course, release the hostages. And I want that ceasefire, but it's got to be under those circumstances. Otherwise, otherwise we'll be where we were on October 6th, which means the next day is October 7th. So these scenes are terrible. The results, I'm on the phone with the Israeli ambassador here in Washington, of course, the ambassador that represents Israel in the western United States, who we just had on, with the head of USAID, with so many others, pushing for a minimization of civilian casualties and providing relief and humanitarian assistance. But what I can't do is say, let's have Hamas regroup for 2 or 3 months, go out, kill another 1,000, come back, and demand another ceasefire. We have the results for the last question. 65% of you think that Biden's handling is about right. 15% say should be more supportive of Israel. 13% more supportive of the Palestinians, less supportive of Israel. 8% unsure. So can't speak more highly of Biden than to say that overwhelmingly people think he's handling it right, and 15 and 13% are on opposite sides of that. Let's take one of our RSVP questions. This one's from Marcella Allen from Encino. And the question that was submitted in writing is, the U.S. has a $31 trillion debt, of which $3 trillion was acquired during the Biden administration. Why is the Biden administration funding the Ukraine war with U.S. debt when our country's socioeconomic condition is the worst since the Great Depression? I am a child of children of the Great Depression, and what we're experiencing now is not the Great Depression. We have a 3.5% unemployment rate. The U.S. economy added 336,000 jobs in just 1 month. My God, during the Depression, you were talking about an unemployment rate of 30 or 40%. Obviously, inflation is tough, and people are dealing with tough situations. As to the level of the national debt, yes, $3 trillion has been added during the Biden administration. Almost $8 billion was added during the Trump administration. We need a much more effective tax system, and we need to cut unnecessary spending. But when you look at the way we tax multinational corporations, it is simply ridiculous. So the way I phrase it is, imagine a TV set is designed in Japan, manufactured in Taiwan, and sold in Los Angeles at a substantial profit. According to the tax lawyers, where was that profit earned? The answer is the Cayman Islands, where there's a zero tax. So we need to tax multinational corporations much more effectively. We need to deal with some of those who are hiding income using cryptocurrency and other things. And we need to deal with this huge national debt problem. Now, that still doesn't answer the Ukraine question. Our aid to Ukraine is expensive, but it is very inexpensive compared to the cost of actually fighting a war ourselves, by factors of 10 and 100. If we had not aided Ukraine, Putin would not only win and take the parts of Ukraine that he has taken so far, he'd take all of Ukraine, and after he digested that, the next step would be Poland, and that's a NATO country, and that's war. So the idea of drawing the line and preventing a major war in Europe that involves us, and to do that without American casualties and with the amounts of money that we are providing to Ukraine, it's hard to talk to any war and say that's a bargain. None of us like war of any kind, and these things are expensive. But compared to the blood and treasure that would be involved if the United States were involved in defending Poland from Russia, this is a very fiscally and morally responsible thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. Let's take a question from the audience.
Okay, Congressman, returning to the issue of the lack of a speaker, we have Stephen from Tarzana. Stephen, you are on now.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us. It definitely supports you and appreciate all the work that you're putting in, especially during this time. Question here regarding the speaker rules. The House is requiring 217 votes for a speaker. Today we saw...
Yeah, normally it's 218. It's just we have a couple vacancies now. Go on.
Okay, gotcha. Today we saw 212 for Hakeem Jeffries, and then we saw, it scattered about, amongst the rest of the clown car. And, every election in the United States is decided by the majority of the vote. So I guess what I'm wondering is why aren't the same rules applied to Congress? Why shouldn't the speakership be awarded to Hakeem Jeffries, who has the majority of the vote?
We need a majority of those voting to elect a speaker, not a mere plurality. Obviously, Hakeem Jeffries, I've voted for him, I think, 18 times now this year. If we had a rule that said that you had to have that where Republicans could see us electing Hakeem Jeffries, I think they would simply refuse to hold the vote. They are so dedicated to making sure that Democrats don't have any say in the process. It would make sense to say, hey, if you come in first, you're speaker. But the Republicans knew, I think, going into today's vote, that Hakeem Jeffries would come in first. And while they couldn't agree on who to vote for, they could all agree not to have the vote if Hakeem Jeffries was going to be elected. So, but yeah, fairness would say if Hakeem has come in first and think about 12 of the 17 or 18 times we voted, maybe he should be speaker. Let's go on to another survey question. Do you approve or disapprove of the House of Representatives' removal of Kevin McCarthy from his position as Speaker of the House? 1, if you approve. 2, if you disapprove of the removal. And 3, if you're unsure. Let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have Sheila from Tarzana regarding energy. Sheila, you are on now.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Congressman Sherman. I want you to know I've been your supporter for many, many years.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys can hear me. Sometimes this phone has been going in and out. I don't mean to be disrespectful by asking this question because of this horrific war in our Middle East. But it's sort of self-centered in a sense of what's happening in our own country. But I would like to ask you this anyway. I know that our country is still pumping oil, and we have millions. I would assume we have millions of reserves of oil. And so my question is, when and if the oil prices are going to go down? California has, I think it's the highest prices in the country. I don't know, but it's hard on everyone, and especially when you're a senior citizen like myself. It's really tough.
California's prices are the highest in the lower 48. Sometimes things are particularly expensive in Hawaii because it all has to get out there, and Alaska is its own thing in different areas. There is a world price for oil that is affected only a little bit by how much is produced here in the United States. We import more oil than we export. We do both, but on a net basis at the present time, we're an importer. And so if the amount charged by Texas to California for oil is the same as the amount charged by Saudi Arabia or Venezuela, we need to push. Now, one of the controversies is how we can look at how much we produce here. That has some effect on the world price. There is the North Slope of Alaska, where we have a reserve in case there's an absolute emergency, and environmentalists definitely do not want to see drilling. We have some other areas in the United States where, for environmental reasons, we don't drill, including the coast of California. So if we weren't concerned about the environment, we'd probably produce a little bit more oil in the United States. Whether that would really affect the world price, economists would argue. And then Saudi Arabia is in this unique position in that they can produce more oil than they do. They can produce less oil and not miss the money. And so the size of Saudi production is the regulating force on the world price. The prices have gone up recently because of the Middle East, not because there's any reduction, but people are insuring, people are stockpiling. And so the world price of oil is about $5 a barrel higher. That's another, I can't do the math in my head, but there's 42 gallons in a barrel. So $5 divided by 42 is the additional cost there. I'm hoping that the Middle East will calm down and that oil prices will calm down. I'm hoping that we can pressure or persuade the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to produce more. And then finally, so there's a differential. You're paying a couple bucks more per gallon in California. We need more refineries in California. We need more refineries producing the grades of smog-resistant or non-smog producing gasoline that we mandate during the summer. I wish I could give you a magic answer that would reduce the price of gasoline, but I've given you some analysis, and that's really all I have. On our survey question, do you approve or disapprove of the House removal of Speaker McCarthy? Approve 28%, disapprove 46%, unsure 26%. So there's a range of opinion there. Let's take one more written. No, let's take an oral question, Don.
Okay, George, about the debt. George, you were on now.
George, are you there?
I guess not.
Okay, well, we'll take a written question. This one from Joseph Nielsen from Woodland Hills. How can you say Republicans plunged Congress into chaos when every Democrat in the House of Representatives voted to remove Kevin McCarthy? Again, if Kevin had sat down with us or even had his lieutenants sit down with us and discuss how to run the House, I think we'd be in a very different position. Would not be inclined to vote for McCarthy for Speaker, but my God, compared to Jim Jordan, McCarthy looks a lot better. And of course, Jim Jordan is the person that the Republicans have currently nominated as their candidate and who's gone down to defeat twice. But we're ready to talk to Republicans about temporarily having the Speaker pro tem have some power. We're ready to sit down and talk about a permanent speaker, but with if some involvement of Democrats in deciding the single most important thing, which is what bills get voted on. And what I'd be ready to vote for, and this would be painful. And look, I take a lot of heat from it, and I represent a Democratic district. But if we as Democrats get together and go along with a Republican for Speaker, it would have to be in a circumstance where we knew that, especially on these appropriations bills, if a bill passed the Senate and had support from both sides of the aisle in the Senate, we need an up or down vote on it in the House. Instead, McCarthy finally, after exhausting all the other alternatives, did that and got bounced out. And it's hard to see how a Republican speaker can bring a reasonable bill to the floor unless we finally agree on some sort of cooperative agreement. Democrats are ready to be partners, and we're in the we have only 48%. We're willing to be junior partners, but we got to be partners. Let's take another question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we have another debt caller, so we'll try this one.
Okay.
I believe the name is Dean.
Hello?
Hi, Dean. What
Hello?
town are you from?
Hey, good morning or good afternoon. Oh, good evening. Yeah, so I'm from Encino.
Oh.
And I think that the issue with oil, stating that we're only producing a little bit less than we were before, we were not only energy independent under Mr. Trump, we were also exporting a lot of oil. We have empowered Iran to sell oil, what was it, like $40 billion worth on the world market, which funds our enemy.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, when we produce more oil, we put more people to work in our country. So the administration seems to be beholden to faction in the government that is not encouraging more oil production, but begging our global adversaries to produce more oil just to hold down the price. My colleagues whom I live with are spending a lot for gasoline in California. So this would help to decrease the national debt by creating more taxes. It would help to put more people to work. And so what would be your objection to that? And
I have no objection to us producing oil in almost all of the United States. I don't want to drill in Yellowstone. I don't want to drill off the coast of Santa Barbara or off the coast of Santa Monica. Now, we are, I think, on target to produce more oil this year than we did at any time during the Trump administration. We produce a lot of oil, and those who produce oil in our country are paid roughly today $85 per barrel, and there is a tremendous amount of oil production. We still, I think there was only a very short time when we export a lot of oil, we import a lot of oil. Sometimes we export oil and then import the same oil. We export it to a refinery and then we bring it back. But except for a very short time, we have imported more than we've exported throughout this century. That still means we drill for and produce an awful lot of oil. We produce the vast majority of what we consume. But we have a free market economy, and you can get $85 for a barrel of oil. And as I said, we're probably going to produce more this year than we did in any of the years of the Trump administration. On the other hand, the economy, in terms of productivity, prices put it aside, but in terms of the productive side of the economy, We're at all-times high in the number of people working, and the amount of fuel we use is very closely tied to how many people are working. Well, they have to drive to work. They got to drive home. And so the amount of oil the amount of miles we're going is an all-time high. I haven't seen the, of course, we're using electric cars a bit. So prices are high, for a lot of things, and particularly gasoline. And then you've got this incremental problem in California that is to a large extent because of limited refinery capacity. I talked about how things are more expensive in Hawaii because it's an island. In a lot of ways, California is an island. That is to say, there's very little population in the areas around California, and we are economically on our own. We're 1,000 miles away from places like Chicago and St. Louis, more than 1,000 from the most populated parts of the country, let alone the East Coast, which is more populated. So I don't think that it's. I mean, there are people concerned with global warming, and they may pray that no oil is produced here in the United States, but what the oil companies respond to, whether it be the small companies and the wildcatters, or whether it be the giant corporations, is that price, and they got $85 a reason to produce oil, and we're producing a lot. As I say, I think we're producing more. We're on target to produce more this year than in any year of the Trump administration. We have time for one more question, and I'd better give a short answer to that one because we get a substantially higher fee if we keep you on too late. So let's hear that last question.
Okay, Congressman Daniel, about veterans. Daniel, you're on now.
Hello. Good evening. I wanted to ask about corporate stolen valor, which is the practice of companies publicly claiming to hire veterans but not actually doing it. And I was wondering if this was something you would be willing to oppose in order to promote veteran hiring.
I certainly don't support companies lying about what they're doing. I mean, some companies will say they're giving a little bit of an edge to a veteran, and they better do that. Some companies will claim that they're doing a lot, giving a big boost to veterans, and they'd better do that. I know that there is some just kind of puffery in press releases, and I'm not aware of a company that makes explicit promises and then cheats on them, but I'd sure like to know. And if somebody has a legislative proposal to make sure that, and maybe we should establish a standard and say, okay, if you want to, use this phrase, substantial veteran supporter, you've got to meet this standard. Then we ought to do that, because you're right. It's easy for a company to just say we love veterans and then not do anything definitive. And companies ought to publish what percentage of their workforce is veteran. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say there's a law in place called VEVRA, VEVRAA, that applies specifically to federal contractors. And it is supposed to require a certain amount of preference in veteran employment, but I personally tried to process complaints under it, and ultimately I feel that's the law that needs to be amended. To your point,
is there a veterans group, the American Legion or VFW or any other veterans groups have a definitive proposal? Hey, if we just changed this or we just added that, I see the problem. I'm not smart enough right now to think of the solution, and if there is a solution, I'm betting that the veteran service organizations have determined what it is, and so
I've been trying to push them as well. So I may be the solution.
I can't be smarter about how to help veterans than the the major veteran service organizations. But hey, maybe you've got an idea that both they and I would love. So please be in touch with my office tomorrow if you have some specific thing. And in the meantime, I've got to rely on VFW, et cetera, American Legion, who have sophisticated staffs here in Washington, to take your idea and turn it into concrete legislative action. Folks, I'm going to have to say goodbye at this point. Keep in mind that our next telephone town hall is November 16th at 7 p.m. You can dial in at 855-920-0548. Now, please stay on the line after I hang up. You'll be connected to our voicemail system. Please give me your email address, even if I already have it, because only then can I send you notices of when our next telephone town hall is. You can also leave a message expressing your opinion, and I won't listen tonight, but I will listen tomorrow. And I want to thank everybody in our parts of the West Side, in the San Fernando Valley, for your interest in what's going on in our country and the world. I want to thank everyone. I'll be back in the Valley and on the West Side soon, have a chance to meet people at a host of public events, including the concerts that are now taking place at Veterans Memorial Park there in Sherman Oaks. And thank you very much. Look forward to talking to you on November 16th, 7 p.m. Thank you. Bye. This is Congressman Brad Sherman.